Go ahead, Douglas.
Have you ever had anybody come to you, Dr. Starr, while you've been practicing and be like, here's a genogram that I've done previously. Here's a heads up so we can just cut a lot of the introductory. Got
Yeah.
it.
Especially, I do a lot of therapy with therapists. So I give therapy to therapists. In LMFTs, more systemic therapists would bring in their genograms, and I often ask them to do so, and they're open to it. And yeah, so that takes. And going back to what I said earlier, sometimes people, when they get to work on their genogram for the second, third time, they notice different patterns, your perspective changes, they add more information to the graph. So it is a working document. Yes, to your question. Yes, Olga. Yes.
One thing that I struggled with the genogram was I felt like that it just feels so much that it's like my perspective on all of these family dynamics, and that it felt a little bit like there was a little bit of strangeness in labeling these relationships between people who are not me based on what I perceived and what I felt like made its way towards me and what I felt in the family. And I kind of to get your thoughts on that. But also, I finally made my way to chapter 3 of the Gahart book. I had somehow skipped it, but I finally read it this week. And there was something in there that I thought was so helpful, which was this idea of serviceable fictions that, like, we're not necessarily defining the ultimate truth of what these relationships are, but that we're defining it enough for it to be helpful. Because I felt myself some tension of like, must I find the truth of the true label of these relationships, or is it okay for it to just be my perspective?
Absolutely. Yes, it should be coming from your perspective, how these relationships were seen through your own eyes. And because it is your genogram. It, and that's what I want you all to get into your heads. This is my genogram. And I want you to own your genogram because it is your lived experiences. It is how you've seen the relationships in your families through your own perspectives. So if you bring your own genogram to, let's say, a different member of your family, they might have a complete different graph as yours. So this one, own it. It's your genogram. It's coming from your own perspective and how you've seen these relationships through your own eyes.
Like, I almost wondered, have there ever been instances where two family members were asked to reflect and qualify relational lines and then compare how similar or different they were?
Absolutely. When I do genograms with families, I normally have each person do their own genogram separately. So then we do one as a family together. And then we compare. Again, this is when genograms come in handy and serve as an intervention in your therapeutic space. So then we compare the ones that they made on their own individually with now a collective genogram. And there's no right or wrong. We just make the collective genogram from each person's perspective.
Do you, if you're doing it with a family, do you just give them a piece of paper and some codes to do, or you're not having them go to an
Oh.
application?
I keep it very simple, and this is another suggestion to all of you. The one we did here is it's highly technical because you all are becoming therapists, so you should know how to do it in a highly technical way. But when you do this with your clients in the future, I normally just give clients 4 relational lines. And if there's substantial history of other things, then I would add a 5th relational line. But I don't make it too complex for my clients because that can throw people off. And I try to have them pick the relational lines that again that they think will go with the relationship that exists on the graph from their perspectives. So keep it simple. Sometimes things that you will discuss with clients. And I think I have a video. So I did found a video from the family that I work with where I was explaining or using a genogram as an intervention. So, and it's very simple. You just show what's on the graph, and then you just allow people to tell you their stories. And then that's an intervention in itself. And it's powerful. It's powerful. So I'll try to look for that video during the break, and I'll play it for all of you. Douglas, yes.
Brianna, I saw your hand first.
I actually saw your hand first, so if you want to go first, you can.
It's a question, and I can ask you outside of this also, Dr. Starr. I was just curious if genograms, like that would be considered case notes for clients. Is that the case? I'm curious from like an ethical standpoint, say notes get solicited for some reason, because that's a lot of information.
So I wouldn't keep it as my therapeutic notes.
Mm.
That will definitely go into the client's chart. That can get reviewed by insurances or whomever
Mm.
needs to review that. Sometimes I don't even put it in the client's chart. I just ask the client, hey, do you want to keep this in your own file? Do you want me to
Mm.
put it here? So they don't necessarily have to go into the client's chart.
Thank you.
Your intervention will definitely go into your therapy notes, psychotherapy notes. I help client develop a genogram, and that's your intervention. But you don't necessarily need to put the graph in the client's chart. Brianna, yeah.
I wanted to ask, so if you had somebody who was let off from, I was thinking, I didn't put all my cousins and all of that, but I was thinking about certain situations in my family where if they had a cutoff from like entire family, would I really draw a line to each individual person? Or is there a way to do an umbrella of like, this is an area where they're just let off from, like this whole family or this whole family? Because it would just look very crazy with every I have a very big family, so to draw a line to every single person would look very chaotic.
That's a great question. And I remember telling someone that you just want to have the most significant people on your graph, right? So I'm not expecting, and I wasn't expecting you all to have your everybody on your graph, but the most significant people, and this is something that you will tell your clients too, who are the most significant people in your life? Who do you want to have on this graph? It's their genogram. So how they're seeing it through their own eyes, their own perspectives. And that's okay. If there's someone that's cut off from everyone else in the family, then we'll note that by making those cut off relational lines from that person to each of the other members. Any other questions about genograms? So we're officially done with the transgenerational models. So you want to hear about genograms from now on. What's coming next is the classical schools and the experiential models. So just keep in mind, and this is also for when you go for your licensure exam, that the transgenerational models are the ones that are more long term, that use genograms, that look into generations, and that emphasize long term therapy. In our class tonight, we'll be discussing contextual family therapy. And I already uploaded object relations and Bowen's family therapy into our Sakai resource folder. So feel free to go there and look at those two lectures and review those on your own. And just want you to know that these three main transgenerational models, again, they're long term. They usually have more than 10 sessions, and at times the psychotherapeutic process would last for many, many years. So these models emphasize therapy until till forever, until whatever we get to, or the client gets to say, hey, I feel like I'm good here. They all emphasize the insight in working through, so more internal working through as opposed to symptom relief. You will notice a difference once we go into the classical models and the experiential models, but more into the classical models. they do have a lot of differences in this area in symptom relief, quick therapy. They're not like the transgenerational models. Transgenerational models primary focus is on generational work and working through reducing anxiety in the system. And we noticed that through Bowenian family therapy, when Bowens kind of introduced us to reducing the anxiety and creating self-differentiation and creating more self-differentiated individuals within a family. So with that, let's jump into contextual family therapy. And that's the lecture that we'll be reviewing tonight. For our second hour, I will send you all into breakout rooms and you'll have to review a case. Hopefully, you already reviewed the case and you'll have to answer questions based off the contextual family therapy model. So, but we'll take care of that in the second hour. So, see. Well, we did some of that already. All right. So, Naj, as you got introduced to contextual family therapy, Naj was the founder of contextual family therapy, and he was a Hungarian American psychiatrist. You'll notice that a lot of the pioneers in these foundational theories are psychiatrists or MDs. And he was one of the founders of the field of family therapy. He, what makes Nodge's approach different was that he noticed that destructive patterns of family interactions often cross many multiple generations, and we could see those patterns through many different generational points. And to address them, he brought patients' grandparents and children into therapy sessions. And he would have, a full entire family in his sessions. He found that by working to balance loyalties and ethical obligations among family members, he could help soothe patients' symptoms, if not always cure them. You will hear a lot of this ethical, balance, loyalty, multi-directional partiality language in this model. His father was actually a lawyer, if I am correct. And it makes sense why he believes so much in balance and justice and ethical standards. Yeah. So let's see. So the limitations of psychoanalytic work led to Nodge to develop his theory. And again, we saw that this in Bowen's family therapy as well. In the 1950s, Nodge recognized that there were a lot of limitations in psychoanalysis and the work that psychoanalysis was doing with many different populations. So it was very limited. He found that it was beneficial to include other family members, just like Bowen's believe, in the treatment and take note of previous generational communication patterns. So now I want to introduce you to the main concepts of this model. And for that, we're going to watch this quick video here by Steph Anya. She's a great LMFD based out of New York City.
First thing to remember with contextual family therapy is that it is considered a multi-generational model or transgenerational model, meaning that there is an understanding that whatever characteristics or symptoms the family is experiencing was likely passed down through multiple generations. Whenever I do these reviews, I want to first let you all know the different words, buzzwords, concepts to look for if you're taking the exam, especially, so that you can identify, oh, okay, this question is a contextual question, or this question is a structural family question. Another concept that is very unique to contextual family therapy is the idea of relational ethics. What that really means is how fair and how just are we in our interpersonal relationships, particularly within the family. And that idea of having fairness and justice within a relationship is really the foundation for the contextual. If you keep that in mind as we go through these sections, each section will make a lot more sense. What does being fair and just in a family look like? It's really being considerate of how decisions impact everyone as a whole. It's about not being completely focused on self, but also knowing that your family is considerate of you as well. So being fair and just and trustworthy within a family is the emphasis within this model. So let's move into a key concept with contextual family therapy, the four dimensions of relational realities. So the first dimension are the facts, things like a person's age, gender, socioeconomic status, race. Those are the given family. The next layer is the individual psychology of each family. So thinking about the inner workings, thoughts, emotions, feelings for any given member of the family. And keep in mind, when we talk about these original family therapy models, they were all typically targeted at working with the whole family, at least more than one member of the family. As we move into some of the later models, using systemic concepts, but they're easily applicable to individuals. These models can be applied to individuals as well, but they're really designed with the whole family in mind to create a bigger separation between traditional psychology and family therapy, which was still emerging. The next layer, when you're working with the families, look at the transactional patterns. And that is, how do each of these people interact with one another? So sister and brother might have a certain dynamic that greatly differs from sister and dad. So paying attention to the transactional patterns is another important thing for a therapist to focus on utilizing contextual family therapy. And the last thing, what we talked about earlier, is paying attention to the relational ethics. So how are the family dynamics? Do you have a person, for example, who has sacrificed all of their passions, loves, pleasures in order to help the family or help an individual in the family? This is where a lot of attention is in contextual family therapy, is looking at those relational ethics. How much balance of give and take is there amongst this family? And the belief within this model is that those things happen simultaneously. All of these contribute to the health of relationships. The, the individual psychology, the transactional patterns, and relational ethics are always simultaneously impacting the health of any given relationship. So now,
To keep this in mind, when you go into your breakout rooms, you will be looking at these four different ethics, okay? We'll read the case, and then the questions are related to the four ethics. So hopefully you caught that. Let's move on to the other concepts this model. So trust, loyalty, and mutual support or responsibility. And these were key elements within family relationships and are still key elements in family relationships. What hold families together? So think about, trust that's within a family, the loyalties that are within a family, and how people support each other in the family system. Problems in families and individuals occur of there being an imbalance in giving and taking. And once you start practicing and seeing families, you will notice a lot of these imbalances. And perhaps you already notice imbalances within your own family in building your genogram. So when there's a lack of caring and liability, there is a breakdown of trust within a relationship. So if we don't have enough caring and liability, people cannot trust each other. Fairness is based on true understanding and another person's perspective or side. If we, someone else, we can be more fair. And that's what Naj believed. He worked really hard into creating this fairness and providing the insight into relationships allows for individuals to take action that may rebalance or heal their relationships. One thing about contextual is that they believe that a well-functioning family is not necessarily free of symptoms, but is relationally balanced and has the consideration of each family member in mind. So I'm not just thinking about me, I'm also thinking about my other family members. Multi-directional partiality is a concept that focuses on the best interests of each individual, even those who are not currently in the room, to promote relational fairness. This was one of the main key concepts in contextual family therapy. For example, father should not make a decision that would have a positive impact on him, but would be harmful for his partner or children. So how do we rebalance that? How do we work with a who only thinks about themselves, and we help that parent think more about the relational aspect in the system? So the theory of change, and this is more like what Nodge believed, that change happens, or how change occurs. And he believed that change occurs by promoting a sense of mutual understanding, responsibility, and trust between family members, which then allows for a facilitation of dialogue to happen in the room and in the system, so people can communicate more freely and more openly, which again makes people feel more um the system and like belong, and that things are more fair, more balanced. The role of the therapist in this model, um, to work through emotional conflicts that are being avoided in order to create a sense of fairness and support among family members. So the therapist does not take a neutral or impartial stance. Um, have to be very direct with each member, and know like the neutrality or impartial. Treatment goals, according to contextual family therapy, are to one, help people take responsibility and accountability for their own behaviors and actions, be able to acknowledge current and past injustices, things that happened in the past that still impact how these people are functioning in their family system. A lot of the times you'll see, start families that there are a lot of in situation that happened in the past that are still in how family members relate to one another. So from a contextual lens, we will look at the, what happened a year ago, what happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that you're still holding on to that. There's still, is this connection, this emotional cutoff between you and this other person. A treatment goal is to free oneself from the loyalties within a family that damage the well-being of the family. And what I mean by that is like lack at the generational point where those loyalty coming from your parents, are there any or attachment that you're still holding on to that are currently damaging the relationship that you have with your family members? Very, yes.
So, how do they balance fairness without scapegoating, right? So, in family systems, oftentimes there is a disruptor, but that disruptor is acting from another place. And so they're making family miserable for everybody, but there's more to it. So, how would a therapist deal with that?
That's a great question. So, from a contextual family lens, you would have to address what happened in the past. Is it that this person is doing the scapegoating? Has the scapegoating role been assigned to this person? And can they free themselves from that role? And, contextual lens, this is why you're not neutral and you're not partial. You're very direct and you're addressing things in a very direct way. You're holding people accountable for behaviors and what they've done that has caused them to their roles or assigned roles to other people in their family. So to answer your question, you would have to work with each family member in addressing things that happened in the past. And there's always a reason why someone takes on the scapegoating role, or the scapegoating role is assigned to that person. And what I've noticed in my experience is that it's often assigned, and the person doesn't want to be the scapegoating person in the family. So you would address that and work through that and holding people accountable for that behavior. So we want to develop fairness within relationship, and something that I feel like contextual family therapy is one of those models that is so different from all the other models because it has this big emphasis on fairness and balance. And again, I will definitely invite you to revisit this when you start practicing your supervision in seeing clients. Um, Back to this, specifically to this model, because it's one of those models that really separates itself from all the other models. It's very unique. So the main interventions here are one, to consider the previous generations, even if you don't have those individuals in the room. So we'll be still talking about grandparents, even if they're not in the room. Help family access their gaps, that they're lacking. What is it that they're missing from each other, from previous generations? Empathy for each person. You will help each person that's in the room practice that empathic listening, empathic, kind of like help them access the empathic um, within themselves. Crediting each person's experiences. You will often see this in family therapy and relational therapy, that people are so used to their pattern or their dynamics that they forget about validating each other's experiences, and they sometimes don't even see it. And it's like, it's all me. This is how I feel. This is how you made me feel. But, jump in and we help that person access a different perspective in crediting and validating other people's experiences. Therapists should practice multi-director partiality. What that means is take perspective of each client in the room. So you would then ask each person in the room, what is your take on this? You see the problem. And once you gather everyone's perspective, then you kind of like this reframe that comes from a holistic um, perspective rather than just one person's perspective. Each family member is held accountable for their fairness towards each other, and adult children are encouraged to look at their parents as humans struggling with their own problems. I think there's a lot of healing here when an adult person is able to look at their parents as a human who has struggled through their whole entire life because they didn't have the support from their own parents. That is very healing for that person and for that relationship and for that family. And I've noticed that in my experience working with people, when I help, look at their parents from a complete different perspective, they're more able to feel this internal freedom, this internal unburdening from, stuff that they've been holding on to against, parents and people within past generations. So it is very healing. Yeah. Now we only have 10 more minutes, and I just want to make a quick stop here. On reactions, feedback. Was this landing?
I guess I'm kind of curious what like the individual psychology part of that means and like what it looks like in the therapeutic setting.
Mm. Think about individual psychology as the mental state being of that person individually. Let's say you have a family of five in your room. So you would look at each person's individual psychology. Where is this person within their own individual internal psychology, mental? The family within the same mental state? Are they all regulated in a balanced mental state, or are there people who are not regulated within their mental state?
Okay, so it's kind of like a combination of maybe like their own like introspection and their a bit like understanding and then their like physiological like
Yeah, their
state. Yeah.
introspection. It's the intrapsychic. Where
Right. Like their understanding of themselves and how they're showing up. It's not like a more clinical, like what their diagnoses or anything like that.
yeah. Yeah, or their introspection is more of I think I do have a slide on I do have a slide on that, but it has the answer to your case. So I cannot show it yet, but I will show it to you. Um yeah, basically it. Individual psychology. And think about Erickson's psychological stages. People hit these different psychological stages of again, we don't have to go to Erickson's psychological stages because we are not psychoanalytic, psychodynamic therapists here. Um, if you do have that, think about it as Erickson's psychological stages. But going back to your question, yes, it's the more intrapsychic where they feel that they're at in the stage of development that they're in within their lives.
That and one of the posts that we had talked about was the mature love and the economy when you have immature people or when you have a balance, right? So there are some people in a family system that has just done the work and some that haven't. And is there ever equilibrium? Like, so what are you supposed to do in there? Because you can't get blood out of a turnip and you can't make somebody who is not seeing their shit. So what do you give me the answers, Dr. Starr? How do we deal with that?
Going back, and this is great. I love that we're just bouncing off of each other's thoughts here. You'll notice once you go into your breakout rooms and you start exploring these for dimensions, um yeah, creating that space for the family. Once you start creating and using that language of fairness, balance, and you start providing interventions that come from those spaces, people can own their own shit, right? Because now I'm seeing this, there's somebody else seeing me for whom I am. Now I get to be seen, and someone else is owning what they did wrong a year ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. So that creates balance. Brianna. Yeah.
Like that you are kind of getting into reality, like what does this look like? I think that's what I'm always wondering, where it's like I can read these beautiful concepts and like, yeah, I get it, but then I'm like imagining being in a therapy room with five people. And here we are talking about who's been wronged, justice, and I can just imagine like the voices, all of the cutting each other off, chiming in, and all of that. I'm like, have a talking stick? Like, what do you do to like give a person that platform to like be able to talk, to even then be able to validate their experience?
So I just want to show you a quick video of Naj doing therapy, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. Okay. I think the video will help addressing some of that. Just give me 1 second here.
We see Naj working with a family of 4 generations. Mark is the 18-year-old identified client struggling in school. His mother has a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia, and they live with her parents. Mark stole $6,000 from his grandfather's bingo group money and ran away from home. He had no consequences. Naj, as therapist, invites each member of the family to speak and also to hear with self-delineation, saying who I am, what I gave, what I need, as well as due consideration, hearing who you are, what you gave, what you need.
Do you see Mark being helpful to you, like about how you feel, or you don't see that?
No,
And
I don't see it. I think he cares in his own way, maybe.
how does that show?
Maybe I fell off, maybe he picked me up, maybe. Again, maybe he cares, I don't know, but I don't see it.
Well, it's because he tells him he's no good, he's never going to be any good. And I think he gets disgusted about that.
But does he really mean to discourage him, or does he like to straighten him out?
Yes, he does. And he's not doing a good job about it because it's going the right way, he's going the wrong way.
You think he could do something else that is more helpful to Mark?
I think he can, not just putting him down all the time.
How is it when he does something well, like he had some good, you had some A's in school, didn't you?
Yes.
Does someone sort of acknowledge that this is good or something? Only the bad things are pointed out.
No.
What about your grandfather made the comment, well, you probably would like to be helpful, or would you like to care? Why is that? I mean, just fighting between him and you, or do you see yourself as caring or doing something for him?
Did you hear Naj's use of the ethical imagination? What is on the other side? Where is fairness? What does each person give? Is the giving recognized? Is someone held captive and not able to grow? Being accountable to know my side and explore the side of the other is demanding work. The therapist presses beyond one-sided judgments heard in the therapy room to imagine and to test silenced perspectives. The unshackled family explore a realm of possibilities between them. As Naj continued to work with Mark and his family, he inquired of each person who they can turn to or what they can give to the family. He noticed actions the family failed to consider. He underscored new possibilities. Each person is met with trustworthy and fair relating, enlarging each person's capacity to thrive.
Who can you rely on, really? Who do you rely on?
Husband?
Your wife mentions that she relies on you. What do you say about that? Who can you rely on?
Man, Almighty God. That's all I can rely on. Believe.
I don't know. I believe that somehow you are available to the family. I don't know in what way. I feel you are giving in some way that may not be so easy to see, but that's just my thought.
Well, I guess in my way of giving is, I keep saying this, but going back to school made a lot of things better. So, just giving up. Wish I could have just went to get the GED. But I didn't do that. I wanted to go back to school and go to college. So I'm doing pretty good now.
So that's giving to the family. Everybody
I think it's
feels
giving
better.
to them. Yeah, they all feel better about that. The kid thinks so too.
Yeah. I want to turn to your mother now because you haven't spoken. I haven't asked you. And I get the feeling that you are available to people and you are not demanding too much from people. But how do you see yourself?
As a therapist, I need to give up my biases, my tendency to determine for the family who is right and who is wrong, or who has given too much or too little. When I lay down my biases, I can help family members to turn and face one another. I can help them assess how they give to one another. It's demanding work. I, as a therapist, have to be willing to turn and face the other in my relational world. I need to be willing to hear the other, to make a claim for myself, to find a way with the other to repair injuries, to give and receive in full consideration of my family legacy with its burdens and gifts. It is courageous work and a life-giving process. I am vulnerable when I open myself to the other, and give without pretense, without demand of the other to fill me. I stand in my vulnerable space to find my words that mean what I mean and offer them. How the other finds their words and gives them to me may sting me or comfort me or do both. The sting and the comfort, when part of honest reaching toward the other, construct the bridge made of gossamer threads strung between our lives, always frail, never guaranteed, yet profound.
Right. Thoughts on that? Reactions? What did you notice from Naj's work?
He seemed to have a lot of control during the session, what I observed.
Space, right?
I think at first when the grandparents were like talking about the child like in front of him, like I immediately was just kind of like, gosh, like age of the child matter where like hearing your parents stand about you and like negative like be able to then like have the capacity to kind of able to have your own perspective and have that be heard. Then at the end where she was just kind of about how like the thing in the kind of this like bridge, I'm like, so like are you saying it's important to hear like the hurtful things in that?
That part of, authentic and being able to express yourself from your own perspective. And that's welcome. Yeah.
Love this model. I think it's so cool. It makes me excited, I think, every time I've read about it. Like that he keeps notes about everybody, because that's a lot of people to track, as well as like put myself in like my shoes. I'm just like, that model like gave me a lot of hope. So talking about like self-care and like not being burnt out on the job, like being able to like, there's like negative sentiment regard for people, be like, there's positive sentiment regard in there. If it's not understood or not recognized or not articulated yet, it's still there, because even the things that are harmful often, a lot of times, come from a place of caring, but they're not adapted to be relationally constructive. So it makes me feel excited to be like always like paying attention to like the fairness thing, the balance thing, because there's both sides of the equation in the room still.
What type of interventions did you notice in that video?
I feel like I noticed like the kind of been multi-directional partiality. He was like specifically to Mark about like how do you contribute or in the space to say where do you think you are to the family, and he was talking about his decision to go back to school and maybe feeling like he wasn't getting recognized or credit for that decision.
Yeah, I'll just jump off of what you were saying there, Kimberly. I had a very similar thought, and he also paid attention to who else, like the mom, because she hadn't answered a question yet, and he acknowledged that he hadn't actually asked her a direct question yet. So he also acknowledged that he had a part in that, and I think perhaps it was the grandma when he was like, I have a sense that you contribute quite a lot, and maybe we haven't named it yet. So kind of like he was attuning to the fullness of the group and making sure that responsibility and that kind of accountability was happening around.
Yes. You see how he did it in a very gentle, balanced way? It's kind of like art, and that's what I love about therapy. Once you become more competent and confident and comfortable doing it, it's an art. You just do it like a very flowy way. And I know you all will get there at some point. It's possible.
Out of curiosity, like as fun as it would be to get to that like state with therapy, the family's energy was also seemed very malleable as well. Like they were showing up in a way that I think was like to some of those breakthroughs that they got to around like how people were contributing. The energy in the room is like elevating. If that tension is increasing, do you just like and maybe say like, hey, it seems like this isn't like, looks like this is a great growth edge that we found, but you're not really in a place to tackle it right now. Let's like, or do you kind of get weeds with them? Like, what's the ethical thing to do in terms of how to handle like a more elevated energetic situation?
And I'm going to give you an answer straight up from contextual family therapy or that lens. I'm going to give you more of a broader answer here, okay? That was to happen in your therapy space with families or relational spaces with people. I don't pivot because that's dismissing and that can be invalidating for some people. Use curiosity. I'm very curious about, is it that activated something for you, or like going with that with a lot of curiosity, and I pay attention to that because that's important. That something that these people are bringing into our therapeutic space. So when you pivot and when people, that's that for me, in my experience, not good. It's not healthy for the therapeutic process and in your therapeutic space. And people tend to not trust you and not believe in the therapeutic process that you're doing with them. So I'm not saying that we have to spend the whole entire therapy session just in that space, but I do share my curiosity into that and help people feel seen, because that's information that's being brought into the space and that needs attention. Yeah. Question. Yeah. Other thoughts? Do you see yourselves using some of these interventions from contextual family therapy? Yeah. All right. Well, that's contextual family therapy. Take a 5 minutes break, come back, and then we'll go into breakout rooms. We'll work on our case. And then we'll have about 10-15 minutes to discuss the case in the bigger group. And I'll try to, well, we have 14 people, so I'll make 2 groups so you have enough people in your groups to work on this case. Okay, I'll see you in 5.
Just a quick process. We did a really cool whiteboard, and then we don't know if it's accessible or not.
Yeah, let's check. I
All
should
right.
available here.
Did anyone grab a screenshot from our group? I tried, but I didn't.
I got a screenshot. It might be a little messy, but I'm happy to put it in the.
I'm just wondering if I cast the whiteboard again, if it would pop back up or not. I think I had originally done it, so I can try that, and if it doesn't work, I'll just exit it. Because it says existing whiteboard.
I think
So let me see.
Yeah.
I think I'm loading it.
This one?
Yeah.
Great. Yes. All right. Guide us through it. Yes. How is this?
I guess we obviously the genogram itself is a little messy, but that's probably because all of us were kind of in it together. We were looking at like the facts. We were focusing primarily on John Jr., who was like the main or identified patient. And so we have kind of relationship with his mom, which has been recently violent and maybe a little like, but they're also close and they live together in the house. We didn't draw the home, but and then relationship with dad is not that great, and dad is like in the house on the weekends because of work. And he is close with his older brother, but his older brother is like off at school. And then we put a external relationship with the church that like Mom John Jr. go to regularly and have like seeking out support from. And then we have the kind of relationship with John Jr. and his dad, and the close relationship with John Jr.'s mom. So that's kind of what we have in our relational lines. I guess we kind of questions about like the difference between like the transactional patterns and relational ethics, like word transactional means. But under there, we put that there's like a pattern of Senior had obviously like a bad relationship with his own dad and left the house at 15. And that's kind of to his ability to have like a relationship with his sons. And that we've noted he probably has some like anxiety or guilt over not being present for them because of work. I don't know if anyone has anything else to add. Then yeah, we just put that like treat someone badly, you get kicked out of the house. So like comment that dad made about John Jr.'s behavior.
This is spot on.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, for the final one of anxiety, we kind of said like, wouldn't necessarily say the anxiety is highest in any one person in the system, but it's more like air patterns, like anxiety of like Mom John Jr. and like their triangle with the church to kind of John Sr. and Philip's absence, since both of these other like makers are out of the house. That probably put a lot of tension on John Jr. and his mom's relationship. And that was like the triangle that they were pulling in, and that John Jr. was trying to do the same with Philip and like to visit him and like that connection to lessen the relationship, or like to the triangle with like his dad or both of their dads, I suppose.
I was also gonna add before we broke out again that relational pattern also goes back a generation, because it does mention that John Sr. and Mary's parents, I don't know if it's about their parents specifically, but it just says that they come from working class families. So that example has been passed down.
Yes. Thank you for adding that, Margaret. Yes. Patterns such as triangles, generational cutoffs, or even competition for power within the family that have been passed down. It's within that transactional patterns. Yeah. Um, this group, yeah, did a great job. Spot on. Yeah. Anyone else like to add anything from the group?
Sent it in the chat, a screenshot of the one we came up with, but it was pretty similar, but we noted a triangle. John Sr.'s kind of from a triangle between Pastor Mary and John Jr. Talked about, I think it was Douglas that brought up history as a caregiver her whole life to her younger siblings, and some of those anxieties might now be passed down in her relationships with children. The dotted line between Mary and John Jr. to note close but maybe too fused, and then cutoffs between John Sr. and the pastor and John Jr. and how the family kind of passed her in to bring some stability to the system.
Where do you all see the most anxiety happening? And were you able to determine where you saw that heavy anxiety happening, by what or how?
Do you think it's telling that the first words? Oh no, I'm sorry. Were you asking the second group? Like the
No.
group that was just talking. Okay.
Open.
But I'll keep going. I do think it's telling that the first words are, if your behavior doesn't improve, you'll be out of the house so fast your head will spin. And so I do think there's like the media Pam of like ultimatum, this has to change or else energy.
Yeah.
I think we also noted that, and we agreed that John Sr., by his absence or maybe his like loud involvement, that really speaks volumes, like burden he definitely is carrying from his own abuse, and that he might be limited in a lot of ways. Like his toolbox might be pretty limited for how he manages his own children. So we saw a lot of anxiety there, definitely.
Just to build on that, from where Deja kind of took us, was like Junior is receiving like the brunt of all of it at the end. It's like it's all flowing downstream to him from the dad's side and his pattern and his relationship, and the mom and her pattern, and then like so much to just get out, to like have a break, like to just remove oneself from the snake's pit.
Add on to that, I think that's why he's the patient in this scenario, because he may be experiencing that anxiety, like that may be falling directly on him. He doesn't know how to maneuver. So it's leading him to skipping class and stealing money, missing his brother, like not knowing what to do. To his parents, he's just being defiant and everything that they think a teenager would be doing.
Yeah. Y'all did a great job. Anyone else would like to add anything else from either group, first or the second group?
I think one of the things that I noted was that like the dad is kind of his distance, and like always Philip, and then that's also now what Junior is trying to replicate, of like get away, and then that leaves like the mom, where it's like everyone's kind of his dad's pattern of trying to leave the family unit, that's then leaving the mom, that's kind of taking like essentially like the blame of all of that. Well, like that she's the one like trying to keep everything together while everyone else is trying to exit. And like I was trying to think of like who has the most anxiety. I'm like, well, everyone has different anxiety. How do you weigh what's more so than others, because now by distancing themselves, they're losing, like, 3 males are losing like a support network, so that they're kind of without as well. But also then a source of anxiety of feeling isolated, alone, and connection. That was my thoughts on that.
Great. Yeah. Family organization has the most anxiety. Yes. So just want to show you this real quick. And I already shared this with all of you. So if you want to look at what you did, which was basically spot on, all in the lecture. Okay. Facts, the individual psychology, the transactional patterns, and the relational ethics are all in the lecture. But overall, y'all got it. Y'all did a great job in recognizing these 4 different dimensions of the ethical relational patterns within the contextual family therapy model. So, hey, and again, this is something that you will be using, not necessarily, you practice from a contextual family therapy lens, but you could honestly use this very integrative, whatever you choose in the future. If you choose to become an integrative, so you could like literally take these 4 dimensions of relational ethics and apply it to your relational work with families and couples and individuals. So it's a very useful tool to have in your toolbox as you continue to learn about the other different models. So with that, we're gonna end here.